They stole my clothes, Cowboy. Please help me, said the Apache woman bathing in the lake. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The sun was almost down when Cole Merrick reined in near the north pasture. The day had been long, the kind that left his shirt damp with sweat and his shoulders stiff from riding fence. The creek ran slow this time of year, broken into pools under the cottonwoods, but it was enough for cattle and enough for him to check before heading back to the cabin. Cole was 37, a man who had spent half his life on the edge of war and dust. He'd scouted for the Army years back, seen what men could do to each other when no one was looking, and he'd buried a wife who died during the spring fever season 3 years ago. Since then, he kept to himself. The ranch was his whole world now, quiet and honest work that kept his hands busy and his mind from drifting too far. He was thinking about the sagging stretch of fence by the north line when something caught his eye, movement down by the water. At first, he thought it might be a deer, but the shape was wrong. He slid off the saddle, looped the reins loosely around a low branch, and stepped closer, boots crunching in the dry grass. That's when he saw her. A young woman stood knee-deep in the creek, her hair long, dark, and dripping down her back, her shoulders tense like a cornered animal. What was left of her dress clung to her frame, torn at the bodice, and hanging open so low that Cole's throat tightened before he forced his eyes away. Her feet were bare, raw from running. Bruises marked her arms, old and new. She saw him and froze. One arm crossed her chest, the other pointed toward the bank where scraps of fabric were scattered in the mud. Her voice came out strained, broken from thirst and crying. "They stole my clothes, Cowboy. Please help me." Cole didn't speak right away. He was weighing things, who she might be running from, if someone was close behind, if bringing her home would mean trouble. But the fear in her face cut through all of it. He shrugged out of his coat and held it out to her, moving slow so she wouldn't think he meant harm. Her eyes stayed locked on his, searching for a lie or a trap. After a long pause, she snatched the coat and turned her back, shoulders hunching as she pulled it around her body. "All right," Cole said quietly. He waited enough to take her elbow and help her to the bank. Her skin was cold despite the heat of the day, her breathing shallow. Up close, he saw more scratches on her legs, the neckline of the torn dress showing the line of her ribs. Cole guided her to the horse, lifting her when her feet wouldn't carry her. She clung to the saddle horn while he mounted, then wrapped her hands in the back of his shirt without being asked. They rode in silence. The trail back was long and dusty, but Cole didn't push the horse faster than she could bear. He could feel her shaking against his back. When they reached the cabin, he swung down first and steadied her as she slid off the horse. She almost fell, but caught herself. Cole led her inside and lit a lantern, the small flame throwing yellow light across the rough-hewn walls. The cabin was plain, a table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed, and a stove with a stack of wood beside it. He'd kept it that way since his wife died. It was easier not to let the place feel like a home. "You can sit," he said, setting a folded blanket near the hearth. She obeyed, sinking to the floor with the coat still wrapped around her. She was breathing fast, her eyes darting around the room like she expected someone else to burst in at any moment. Cole didn't press her with questions, not yet. He built a fire, set water to boil, and then took out his small kit of needle and thread. The dress was torn nearly in half. He worked in silence, stitching it back together with rough, uneven lines, but careful not to pull too tight. She watched him the whole time, studying the way his hands moved, like she was trying to decide if she could trust him. By the time he finished, the fire had warmed the cabin. She had stopped shaking, though her eyes were still wary. Cole sat back on his heels and met her gaze for the first time since they came inside. He didn't know her name, didn't know why she had been down at the creek or what kind of men had left her there, but she was alive and out of danger for the night, and that was enough. Cole set the dress aside, leaned back against the wall, and let the room go quiet except for the crackle of the fire. Tomorrow he would have to ask questions, maybe ride into town to find out who had done this. Tonight he would just keep watch. Cole didn't sleep that night. He sat by the table with a rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the door, listening to every sound outside. The fire burned low, filling the cabin with shifting shadows. Behind him, the woman lay wrapped in his coat and blanket near the hearth, her breathing quiet but uneven, like she still half expected someone to burst through the door. It wasn't the first time Cole had brought someone hurt or half-starved to his cabin. He had done it during the war years, soldiers, scouts, even deserters, when leaving them outside meant certain death. But this felt different. He didn't know her name or what trouble might follow her, and that was the part that kept him from closing his eyes. When the first light came through the wefts in the shutters, Cole stirred the fire back to life. The smell of smoke woke her. She sat up slowly, pulling the coat tighter around her body, her hair falling loose over her face. Cole set the coffee pot on the stove and waited until the water boiled before speaking. "There's a wash basin outside if you want it," he said. "No one around this time of morning." She hesitated, then nodded once. When she stood, the coat slid open just enough for Cole to see the deep red marks on her shoulder. Rope burns, maybe? Before she pulled it closed again. He stepped outside with her, keeping his distance while she used the basin and splashed her face, her hands trembling for more than just the morning chill. Cole busied himself with chopping kindling near the porch so she wouldn't feel watched. Back inside, she settled near the fire again, her wet hair hanging down her back. Cole poured 2 tin cups of coffee and handed her one. She stared at it for a long moment before finally taking it. "You got a name?" he asked. She looked up at him through the curtain of her hair. "Nia," she said softly. Cole nodded. "I'm Cole Merrick." He waited, gave her space, then asked, "You want to tell me what happened?" She sat quiet for a long time, hands wrapped around the cup. When she spoke, her voice was flat, almost too calm. "3 boys, white. I crossed near the town yesterday. They stopped me, laughed, took my things." Cole felt his jaw tighten. "Just your clothes and food," she said. "I had some corn in a sack. They threw it in the dirt." Her words came short and clipped, but there was no mistaking the humiliation in her face. She kept her eyes on the fire as she spoke, as though saying it out loud made it worse. Cole thought about the boys in town, about the kind who hung around the saloon too long and went looking for trouble when the whiskey ran out. He could picture them seeing her down by the road, alone, tired, an easy target. "You got family nearby?" he asked. "No," her voice was harder this time. "I came north to find work, maybe trade. Nothing left south." That told him enough. He knew what had happened to some of the Apache settlements after the last push by the army. Burned camps, families scattered. She was lucky to be alive. Cole sat back, weighing the risk. He had no reason to keep her here. Bringing her back toward town would probably draw questions he didn't want to answer. But turning her out with nothing meant she wouldn't last 2 days. "You can stay here a while," he said, "till you figure where you're headed." Her dark eyes flicked to his, sharp and suspicious. "Why?" "Because I got room, and I don't let folks starve on my doorstep," Cole said simply. Nia didn't answer, just set the empty tin cup down and pulled the coat tighter around her shoulders. After breakfast, Cole brought her the mended dress. The stitches were rough, but it would hold. He turned his back while she changed near the corner of the cabin, staring at the fire until she said, "Okay." When she stepped out, the dress was clean but tight across her chest where he had pulled the thread too close. Cole caught himself glancing before looking away. "I got work to do," he said, grabbing his hat from the peg. "You can rest or come with me. Up to you." "I come," she said quickly, as if staying inside alone was worse. Cole saddled the horse and they walked the fence line together. Nia stayed close, not speaking, just watching how he checked the posts and tightened the wire. At first she moved slowly, limping from her cut feet, but after a while she started carrying tools for him without being asked. By midday, the sun was high, and Cole stopped at the creek to water the horse. Nia knelt to wash the mud from her legs, and Cole noticed how carefully she kept her back to him, not out of modesty, he realized, but because she was still afraid to let anyone near her blind spot. "You don't have to keep looking over your shoulder here," Cole said quietly. She didn't turn, just said, "I keep watch for myself." When they made it back to the cabin, Cole set her on the porch rail with a needle and a scrap of cloth. "You know how to sew?" he asked. She nodded once. He left her there while he stacked wood. By the time the sun dropped low, she had finished the patch and was already threading the needle again. That night, Cole sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, watching the tree line. Inside, Naya lay near the fire again, but this time her breathing came easier. He knew this wasn't over. Whoever those boys were, they might come looking, and if they did, he'd be ready. For now, the cabin was quiet, except for the sound of the crickets outside and the fire snapping low. It was the first time since finding her that Cole felt something other than anger, a thin, cautious sense that maybe she had decided not to run. The next morning, Cole woke early as usual. The sky was just starting to gray at the edges when he opened the door and stepped outside, the air cooler than the night before. The fire had burned down to embers, and he heard Naya stirring behind him, pulling the coat tighter around her shoulders as she sat up from her blanket. Cole set water to boil and handed her a plate with the last of the cornbread from the night before. She ate it slowly, glancing toward the door, as if still expecting trouble. "You can stay inside today, if you want," Cole said as he poured coffee. Naya shook her head. "I work," she said, her voice low but firm. Cole studied her for a moment, then nodded. He didn't want her pushing herself too hard. Her feet were still cut and sore, but he understood what she meant. Sitting inside all day would make her feel cornered, helpless. He handed her a pair of worn socks he'd dug out of a trunk and told her they'd make it easier to walk. She pulled them on without complaint, then stood near the door, waiting. They spent the morning hauling water from the creek to the trough near the corral. Naya worked quietly, carrying one bucket at a time, her shoulders stiff with effort. Cole noticed how determined she was, refusing to rest, even when her arms began to shake. "You can sit a spell," he told her. She just shook her head and kept walking. By midday, they had the trough full, and Cole brought the horse in to drink. Naya stayed near the gate, watching carefully, her body tense when the animal moved too quickly. "You ever worked around stock before?" Cole asked. She shook her head. Horses, goats, chickens." "You'll get used to him," Cole said, keeping his tone calm. "He won't hurt you." Naya nodded but didn't move closer until Cole had finished brushing the horse down. After they ate a quiet meal back at the cabin, Cole went to the shed to grab tools. When he came out, Naya was sweeping the porch with a makeshift broom, her dark hair falling loose around her face. "You don't have to do that," Cole said. "I do," she replied simply and kept sweeping. Cole didn't argue. It wasn't about cleaning. It was about proving something. Maybe to him, maybe to herself. In the late afternoon, he took her down the line to check a section of fence he'd been meaning to mend. As they worked, Cole kept watch on the horizon, his eyes tracing the distant road toward town. He hadn't seen anyone come near since the night he found her, but he couldn't shake the thought of those boys and whether they might come looking. "You know their names?" he asked finally. Naya hesitated. "One called Clay," she said. "Others I didn't know." Cole nodded slowly. Clay? He'd heard the name before, a ranch hand's kid who spent too much time in the saloon, trouble looking for somewhere to happen. "If they show up here, you stay inside," Cole said. Naya's dark eyes met his. "You fight them?" "If I have to," he said, his voice steady, but she could hear the edge under it. They finished the fence just before sundown and headed back to the cabin. When Cole struck a match and lit the lamp, he noticed Naya watching him closely, as if weighing whether to speak. "You take me to town?" she asked quietly. Cole looked at her for a long moment. "Not yet," he said. "Not till I know it's safe." She didn't argue, but something in her shoulders eased, as though she'd been afraid he might send her away. That night, Cole cooked beans and salt pork, while Naya sat at the table mending one of his torn work shirts. She worked with quick, sure hands, and when she was done, she set the shirt neatly on the table in front of him. "You sew better than I do," he said. Her mouth almost curved into a smile, but she only said, "My mother taught me." When the fire burned low, Cole rolled out his bedroll on the floor instead of taking the cot. Naya looked at him, surprised. "You sleep there?" "Cot's yours tonight," Cole said simply. She hesitated, then lay down on the cot, still wrapped in his coat. It was the first time she'd slept off the floor since she came. Cole stayed awake longer than he meant to, listening to the sounds of the night. The crickets outside, the soft hiss of the fire, the slow rhythm of her breathing as it finally evened out. He felt the old habit of watchfulness settle over him, the one that had kept him alive on scouting missions years ago. But tonight it felt different. He wasn't just guarding himself, he was guarding her too. Before he finally closed his eyes, he made a decision. Tomorrow he would ride to town quietly, just to see who was hanging around and if anyone was talking about her. If there was trouble coming, he needed to know before it reached his door. For now, the cabin was still. The fear in her face was fading bit by bit, and though he wouldn't say it out loud, that was enough reason to keep her here another day. Cole was up before dawn the next day. The air outside was still and cold enough that his breath showed. He saddled the horse in silence, checking the cinch twice, then came back inside. Naya was awake, sitting on the edge of the cot with the coat still around her shoulders. "You ride?" she asked. "Just into town," Cole said, pulling on his hat. "I need to see who's hanging around." Her jaw tightened. "Clay, maybe," she said. "Better I find out than wait for him to come here." Nia stood as if ready to go with him, but Cole shook his head. "Safer if you stay put. Keep the door barred. Rifles behind the table if you need it." She hesitated, then nodded once, her face pale but steady. The ride into town was quiet, the sky turning pale gold as the sun came up over the hills. Cole kept his shoulders loose, but every sound made him check the horizon. When he reached the main street, the town was waking slowly. A couple of wagons moving hay, someone sweeping outside the general store. He tied his horse near the feedlot and walked down the boardwalk toward the saloon. The place smelled of stale whiskey, even from outside. Inside, the bartender looked up, surprised to see him this early. Cole bought coffee and took a seat near the back where he could see the door. It wasn't long before he spotted them. Two boys, about 20, laughing too loud, one of them with hair too long under a sweat-stained hat. Clay. Cole recognized him from roundups years back. The same smirk, the same mean glint in the eye. They didn't notice Cole right away, but when they did, the laughter cut short. Clay squared his shoulders and said, just loud enough to be heard, "Look who crawled in. Heard you've been keeping a pet up at your place." Cole didn't move, didn't blink. "You got something to say?" "Say it." Clay grinned. "She's a wild one, ain't she? Should have seen her run. We was just having some fun." Cole stood slowly, set the tin cup down. The room went quiet except for the sound of boots shifting on the floor. "You come near my land again, you won't walk away," Cole said, his voice flat as iron. Clay's grin slipped but didn't vanish. "You think you can keep her?" Cole's hand hovered near his gun but didn't draw. "I think you should finish your drink and ride the other direction." The bartender cleared his throat and muttered, "Boys, take it outside or take it somewhere else." Clay glanced at his friend, then spat near the stove and walked out, the door slamming behind him. Cole waited a long minute before following, making sure they were headed out of town. He didn't like leaving them behind angry, but at least he knew their faces now, and that meant he could be ready. By the time he rode back, the sun was high. He spotted smoke from the chimney before he reached the cabin. Naya was outside, crouched near the garden patch, a stick in her hand, turning the soil. She stood quickly when she saw him. "You saw them?" she asked. "I saw them," Cole said, sliding off the horse. Her eyes were searching his face. "They come here?" "Not yet," Cole said. "Might try, but they know I'm watching." Naya's shoulders eased a little, though she still gripped the stick like a weapon. "Come inside," Cole said. "I brought flour. We can make bread." It was a small thing, but she followed him in, set the stick by the door, and washed her hands. Together they mixed the dough at the table, her hands working next to his. For the first time since she'd come, there was a trace of calm in her face. After the bread went in the stove, Cole showed her how to load the rifle properly. She listened carefully, her brow furrowed, and when she tried it herself, she handled it steadily, no shake in her hands. "That's good," Cole said. "Only if you need to." "I know," Naya said quietly. That night, they ate the fresh bread with beans and sat near the fire. Naya stayed close, her knee almost touching Cole's where he sat on the floor. She didn't speak much, but when he stood to check the latch on the door, she watched him like she trusted him to keep it closed. Later, when Cole lay down on the bedroll, Naya stayed awake a while, staring into the fire. Then she rose, crossed the room, and spread her blanket on the floor closer to where he was. Cole glanced at her but didn't speak. She didn't explain herself. The fire crackled, the wind picked up outside, but inside the cabin, there was a stillness that hadn't been there before. The kind that meant she was no longer just a guest, but someone beginning to belong. Cole stared at the ceiling until sleep took him, one hand still near the rifle, the other near enough that if she reached out, she would touch it first. The wind shifted just after sundown, carrying with it a smell of wood smoke that wasn't from their fire. Cole noticed it first, standing out on the porch after supper with a lantern in one hand, listening to the night. The horses were restless in the corral, ears flicking toward the ridge. Inside, Naya was cleaning the table, her dark hair tied back with a strip of cloth. When Cole stepped back in, she saw his expression and went still. "What?" she asked. "Smoke," Cole said quietly. "Someone's camped near the North Trail." Naya's face tightened. She glanced toward the rifle leaning near the door. "Them, could be," Cole said. "Could be just drifters passing through." He didn't believe that, and neither did she. Cole took the rifle and checked the chamber, then nodded toward the lamp. "Blow that out," he said. She did without question, plunging the cabin into near darkness, except for the low glow of the fire. Cole stepped outside and crouched near the edge of the porch, scanning the tree line until his eyes adjusted. An hour passed before he saw movement. Two figures, low to the ground, moving along the fence line, too careful to be strangers just passing through. Cole eased back inside and closed the door without a sound. "Two of them," he said. Naya stood near the hearth, her face pale but steady. "Clay?" "Don't know yet, but they're watching." Cole barred the door, then motioned her closer. "If they try for the horses, we wait till they're near the corral, then I'll step out." "You fight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If I have to," Cole said. "You stay behind the door. Rifles ready if they come for the house." Naya nodded, swallowed hard, then moved to the wall near the door and crouched low. The next hour stretched slowly. The sounds outside came and went, a horse snorting, boots scuffing on dirt. Once Cole heard a low laugh and knew for certain who it was. When a shadow moved near the corral gate, Cole acted. He unbarred the door, stepped out fast, rifle leveled. "Leave the gate," he said, voice like iron. The figures froze. One of them was Clay. Cole recognized him in the moonlight, hat pulled low, but face still smug. "Evening, Merrick," Clay said, his tone too casual. "Didn't mean no harm, just passing through." "You're a long way from the saloon," Cole said. "Turn around and keep walking." Clay didn't move. "Heard you got company. Thought we'd see for ourselves." Cole's finger stayed near the trigger. "You saw enough. Go." The other boy shifted nervously, glancing toward the trees. "Come on, Clay," he muttered. "Ain't worth it." Clay stared at Cole a moment longer, then spat in the dirt. "You can't keep her forever," he said. "Watch me," Cole said. Clay finally backed off, muttering under his breath. They disappeared into the trees, and Cole stayed there until he couldn't hear them anymore. When he went back inside, Naya was still crouched near the door, the rifle clutched in her hands. Her breathing was quick, but her eyes were steady. "They gone?" she asked. "For now," Cole said, setting the bar back in place. She stood slowly, set the rifle back near the wall. For a moment, she just stood there, arms crossed tight over her chest. Then she said, "They come back." "Maybe," Cole admitted, "but they know I'll be waiting." Nia moved closer to the fire, staring into it like she was trying to see past it. "You could send me away then." "No trouble." Cole leaned against the doorframe, shaking his head. "Not happening. Trouble's not you, it's them, and running only makes it worse." Naya looked at him for a long moment, something in her expression shifting. She didn't say thank you, that wasn't her way, but she reached for the coat he'd given her the first night and pulled it around herself again, like she had that night by the creek. Cole saw the change in her. Fear was still there, but so was something steadier. Trust maybe, or the start of it. Neither of them slept much. Cole sat near the door with a rifle across his lap, and Naya stayed by the fire until it burned down to coals. When she finally lay down on the cot, she didn't wrap herself as tight in the blanket as before. At first light, Cole went out to check the corral. The horses were unharmed, but he found boot tracks in the soft dirt, proof they had been closer than he liked. He erased them with his heel before Naya came outside. They worked together that morning, hauling water, feeding stock. Nia didn't speak until they sat down to eat. "You not afraid?" she asked suddenly. Cole looked at her. "Of what?" "Of them," she said. He took a long drink of coffee before answering. I've been afraid of worse. Fear is just something that keeps you awake. You don't let it run you. Naya nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of the tin cup. I try, she said. You did fine last night, Cole said. That brought the faintest hint of a smile to her lips. Small, but real. By evening, the cabin felt different. Less like a place they were hiding in, more like a place they were both holding together. Cole sharpened his knife at the table while Naya mended another shirt. And when the wind outside shifted again, they both looked toward the door at the same time. Ready. Whatever came next, they wouldn't face it as strangers anymore. The day after the men came, the air felt heavier, as if the whole place was holding its breath. Cole noticed it when he stepped out at dawn. The sky was flat and gray, no breeze in the cottonwoods. Even the horse moved slower, ears turning toward the ridge every few minutes. Inside the cabin, Naya was already awake, sitting cross-legged near the fire with the coat pulled around her. She didn't look as tense as she had the night before, but her eyes followed him when he moved, as if making sure he was really still there. Cole brought in water from the well and set it to boil. We'll stay close today, he said. No need to ride out far. Just keep watch. Naya nodded. I watched too, she said, and went to the door, scanning the yard the way he did. For most of the morning, they worked without speaking. She helped gather kindling, ground some of the new flour for bread, and swept the porch until the boards were clear of dust. Cole stayed near the corral, repairing a loose rail and keeping an ear out for anything moving along the tree line. By midday, the sky had darkened enough that Cole decided they'd better bring everything under cover. Naya helped him carry tools to the shed, her hands dirty but steady. You're not scared? She asked quietly as they stacked the last of the firewood near the cabin. Scared enough, Cole said. Just don't let it make me stupid. She was quiet a moment, then said, You stand there with your rifle. You didn't shake. Cole paused, leaning against the doorframe. I shook plenty on the inside, he admitted. That made her look at him differently, softer, almost relieved to know he wasn't made of stone. The rain started just before dark. Light at first, then steady. They stayed inside, the sound of water on the roof filling the room. Nia sat on the cot, brushing her wet hair with her fingers. Cole sat at the table, carving a new handle for the shovel with his knife. After a long time, Nia said, You fought for me. Cole didn't look up. You didn't need to see them take another thing from you. She was silent, and when he finally glanced at her, her eyes were shiny in the firelight. You could have sent me away, she said. I told you before, Cole said. I don't leave folks to fend for themselves. Nia stood slowly and crossed the room. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that he could smell the smoke in her hair. You still look away, she said quietly. Cole set the knife down and met her eyes, trying to do right by you. Nia didn't speak. She just reached down, took his rough hand in hers, and placed it against her shoulder where the rope burn had been. The skin was healing, but still marked. Cole's breath came slow. You sure? She nodded once. He didn't rush. He stood, still holding her hand, and brushed back a strand of her hair that had fallen forward. When he touched her cheek, she didn't flinch. You're safe here, he said softly. I know, she whispered. When he kissed her, it wasn't hard or hurried, just careful, almost testing. She leaned into it, one hand clutching his shirt like she was anchoring herself there. When they finally pulled apart, she stayed close, resting her forehead against his chest. Cole wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her still. Neither of them said much after that. They ate supper quietly, and when it came time to sleep, Cole didn't unroll his bedroll on the floor. Instead, he sat on the edge of the cot and looked at her, waiting. Nia didn't tell him no. She just slid over enough to make room. They lay side by side in the dim light of the dying fire, not touching at first. Then slowly, Nia shifted closer until her head rested near his shoulder. Cole let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding and rested his hand lightly over hers. Outside, the rain softened, the wind carrying the smell of wet earth through the cracks in the shutters. For the first time since finding her at the creek, Cole felt the cabin wasn't just a place to guard. It was a place that might hold both of them if they let it. When sleep finally came, it came easier. And when Cole woke once in the night, reaching for the rifle by habit, he felt Nia's hand still resting against him and let himself relax. The morning after the rain, the sky was washed clean, the air sharp and cool. Cole woke to find Naya still lying beside him, her dark hair spilling across his shoulder. For a long moment, he just stayed there, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. When she opened her eyes, there was no startle this time, only a steady look that made his chest feel tight. "You sleep?" he asked quietly. Naya nodded. "First time," she said. Cole sat up, pulled on, all that up, pulled on his boots and went to stir the fire back to life. The cabin smelled of damp wood and last night's ashes, but it felt different now, lived in, not just a place to wait out trouble. When they finished breakfast, Cole saddled the horse. "I'm riding into town," he said. Naya's face shifted, the calm she had gained the night before slipping just a little. "You stay here?" she asked. "You can come," Cole said, watching her carefully. "Your choice, but if you do, you stay close to me." She hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I come." The road into town was still muddy from the night's rain, so they rode slowly, the horse picking its way carefully. Cole felt Naya's hands grip the back of his shirt, not in fear exactly, but like she was bracing herself. When they reached the main street, people were out early, hauling water, sweeping the front of the stores. Conversation slowed when they saw Nia riding behind him. Cole felt the eyes on them, but he didn't turn his head. He tied the horse outside the general store and helped Nia down. She kept her chin high, shoulders squared, though Cole could see how tight her jaw was. Inside, the storekeeper looked up from behind the counter, eyebrows raising slightly when he saw who had come in. Cole nodded once. "Need flour, sugar, coffee, nails," Cole said. The man packed the order without comment, though his eyes flicked to Nia now and then. She stayed near Cole, her hands clasped in front of her, but when another customer came in, a man about Clay's age, she went rigid. Cole saw it. He stepped just enough to put himself between her and the door, his voice even. "You got a problem? You take it somewhere else." The man held up his hands. "No trouble, Merrick. Just shopping." When they left the store, Nia let out a slow breath, as though she'd been holding it the whole time. "You didn't look away," she said softly as Cole tied the parcels to the saddle. "Wouldn't have mattered if I did," Cole said. "Folks see what they want to see. Let them." They stopped at the blacksmith before heading out of town, and Cole heard the talk from two men standing nearby, whispers about Clay being thrown out of the saloon the night before, drunk and yelling about the woman up at Merrick's place. Cole didn't speak of it until they were halfway home. "Word's out," he said. Naya was silent for a while. "Then they come," she said. "Maybe," Cole admitted, "but I'll be ready." When they got back to the cabin, Nia helped him unload the supplies, moving with more purpose than before. She swept out the cabin, started a pot of beans, and even took the wash down to the creek. Cole watched her for a while before joining her, kneeling beside her as she scrubbed the cloth against the rock. "You're not running?" he asked. Naya looked at him, her eyes steady. "I ran before, no more." That night, they sat outside on the porch while the sky turned orange with sunset. Cole had his rifle across his lap, and Naya sat close enough that her shoulder brushed his arm. "They stare in town," she said finally. "They can stare," Cole said. "Doesn't change a thing." Naya was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You tell them I stay here." "I just did," Cole said simply. Naya turned her face toward him, and there was something almost like relief in her expression. She didn't smile, not fully, but her hand found his where it rested on his knee. Cole's fingers closed around hers. When they went inside, Naya moved to the cot without waiting for him to ask. Cole sat down beside her, and for the first time she reached for him first, pulling him close. Later, after the fire burned down low, they lay side by side again, but there was no distance between them now. Cole's arm rested over her waist, and Naya's breathing was calm, no longer tight with fear. Outside, the night sounds returned, crickets, the distant howl of a coyote, but inside, the cabin was steady and warm. Whatever might come down the trail, they would face it together. The next 2 days passed with an uneasy quiet. Cole stayed close to the cabin, working the fence and keeping the rifle within reach. Naya worked beside him, hanging wash, cooking, even patching the garden beds, But the way her eyes cut toward the tree line told him she hadn't forgotten the night Clay came. It was near sundown on the third day when the sound of hooves broke the calm. Cole was stacking wood near the shed and froze, listening. Not one horse, three. They were coming fast, the sound carrying sharp through the evening air. "Nia," he called, his voice low but urgent. She was on the porch, already gripping the rifle he'd left near the door. Cole took it from her, checked the chamber, and handed it back. "Stay inside," he said. "I stay by the door," she said, her jaw set. Cole didn't argue. He stepped off the porch and stood near the corral, rifle loose in his hands but ready. The riders came into view, Clay and two others, dust rising behind them. They slowed as they neared the cabin, stopping just far enough that Cole had to raise his voice to be heard. "You're trespassing," Cole called. Clay grinned from the saddle. "Easy, Merrick, we just came to talk." "Talk from the road," Cole said. Clay swung a leg over and dropped to the ground, taking a few steps closer. "You got no right keeping her up here like she's yours," he said. Cole felt his jaw tighten. "She's not yours either." The second rider spat in the dirt. "She don't belong here, you know it." "She stays where she wants," Cole said. Clay's grin widened. "Does she? Or is she too scared to run?" Cole heard the floorboard creak behind him. Naya had stepped just inside the door. Her voice came steady, louder than he'd ever heard it. "I stay here," she said. Clay's grin faltered for a second. "Girl, you don't know what you're saying." "I know," Naya cut him off. "You take my clothes. You laugh. I not run again." The air went still. Clay's face hardened, and he took another step forward. That was enough. Cole raised the rifle, steadily sighting down the barrel. "Mount up," he said. Clay stared at him, weighing whether to push it. The other two were already backing toward their horses. "This ain't over," Clay said finally. "It is if you keep riding," Cole said. Clay spat once more, then swung into the saddle and wheeled his horse around. They rode off slowly at first, then faster as they hit the trail. Cole stood there until the sound of hooves faded completely, then lowered the rifle. He turned back toward the cabin. Naya was still by the door, her hands tight around the rifle she held. "You all right?" Cole asked. She nodded, though her chest rose and fell fast. "They not stop." "No," Cole said, stepping closer. "But they know now. They know you got a place here." Naya's grip on the rifle loosened. She set it back near the wall, then stepped off the porch and came to him. Her hands were dirty from the doorframe, but she placed one flat against his chest. "You stand for me," she said. Cole nodded. Every time. Her fingers curled in the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. Cole didn't hesitate. He bent his head and kissed her, this time not careful, but certain. She didn't flinch. She leaned into him, her hands gripping his back. When they finally stepped apart, the tension in her shoulders was gone. Inside the cabin that night, they sat close by the fire. Cole cleaned the rifle, set it within reach, then looked at Naya. "If they come again, we might have to go to the sheriff. Make it official." Nia tilted her head. "Official? Means no one can touch you without paying for it," Cole said. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we go." Later, when they lay down on the kia, Nia didn't wait for him to reach for her. She pressed herself against him, her head under his chin, and let out a long, slow breath. Cole rested his hand against the curve of her back. For the first time since he'd found her, he let himself think past tomorrow, past the fence repairs, past watching the horizon for riders, and pictured a life where she was here because she chose to be, not because she had nowhere else to go. Outside, the night was quiet again, but it wasn't the fragile quiet of fear. It was the kind that came after a line had been drawn and held. The next morning, Cole saddled the horse before the sun was fully up. The air was cool, the sky pale, and the sound of boots on the porch brought Naya outside. "You go?" she asked, her voice calm but watchful. "Into town," Cole said. "Best we end this before it starts again." "You coming?" She hesitated for just a heartbeat, then nodded. "I come." They rode in together, slower this time, not hiding. When they reached town, people turned to watch, just like before. But Cole didn't look away. He tied the horse in front of the sheriff's office and helped Naya down, keeping his hand on her back as they walked inside. The sheriff, a man in his 50s with a tired face, looked up from his desk. Merrick, he said, then glanced at Nia. Heard some talk. You heard right, Cole said. 3 boys, Clay Jensen and 2 others, came to my place at night. Tried to spook my stock. Threatened her. The sheriff leaned back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. Clay's been trouble before. I'll ride out, speak to his old man, make sure it don't happen again. Talking's not enough, Cole said flatly. If they set foot on my place again, it won't be words next time. The sheriff studied him, then nodded. I'll make it clear. His gaze shifted to Nia. You want to press charges? Nia stood straighter. I want them stay away, she said. I want a man take my clothes, my food, my name. The sheriff nodded again, slower this time. Reckon we can make that happen. I'll put it down in writing. By the time they left, Cole could feel some of the tension ease from Nia's shoulders. Outside, she stood for a moment, looking down the street. The same men who had whispered the last time were there, watching. This time, Nia didn't look away. On the ride home, she was quiet, but not in the same wary way as before. When they reached the cabin, she slid down from the saddle and turned to face him. You make it safe, she said simply. Cole untied the parcels from the saddle and set them on the porch. Safe's not just my job, he said. But yeah, it's safe now. That evening, Nia cooked stew while Cole mended a broken strap on the saddle. When they sat down to eat, the cabin felt warmer than it ever had, not just from the fire, but from the quiet understanding between them. After supper, Nia took out the comb Cole had bought for her weeks earlier and braided her hair carefully. When she was done, she turned to him. You give me this, she said, touching the comb. You fix my dress. You fight for me. Wait. Cole set the strap aside and met her eyes. Because I want you here, not because you need a place, because you choose it. Nia was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. I choose, she said. She crossed the room, knelt in front of him, and took his hand. I stay. Cole's throat tightened, but he nodded. Then we make this home for good. Later, when the fire burned low, they sat on the porch together. The air was still, the stars sharp overhead. Cole's arm rested around her shoulders, and Nia leaned against him, her eyes half closed. They not come back, she said. No, Cole said, and if they do, they'll find we're ready. For a while, they just sat there, the night quiet around them. Cole thought about the past weeks, the first night by the creek, the fear in her eyes, the bruises on her skin. All of that felt far away now, not gone, but changed into something that no longer owned her. When they finally went inside, Cole didn't bother with his bedroll on the floor. He lay beside her on the cot, the firelight soft across the room. And for the first time, it felt less like shelter and more like a home built for two. The next morning, Cole went out to check the fence. When he turned back, Nia was standing on the porch, her hair braided, the mended dress fitting clean and proud. She was holding a small bundle of seeds he'd bought on their last trip, ready to plant. Cole smiled, the kind of smile he hadn't felt in years. Let's get to work, he said. They worked side by side that morning, hands in the soil, the sun coming up warm and bright. For the first time, there was no urgency, no fear, just the quiet rhythm of building something that would last. When Cole stood and looked at her, dirt on her hands and a small, rare smile on her face, he knew without doubt that she wasn't just passing through. She was part of the land now, part of him. And this time, he wasn't letting go. The story of Cole Merrick and Nia offers a profound lesson about the power of compassion and standing up for what is right, no matter the cost. Cole, a weathered cowboy shaped by loss and hardship, could have turned away from Nia's plea by the creek, avoiding the trouble her presence might bring. Yet he chose to act with kindness, offering her shelter, protection, and dignity when she had been stripped of everything. This teaches us that true strength lies not in physical might, but in the courage to protect the vulnerable, to see past a fear or prejudice, and to build trust where it has been broken. Nia's journey from fear to resilience, choosing to stay and fight for her place, reminds us that healing and hope can emerge from even the darkest moments when someone believes in us. Their bond, forged through shared struggle, shows that home is not just a place but a commitment to stand by one another. In our own lives, we face moments where we can choose to act with empathy or walk away. Cole's choice urges us to be the one who stays, who fights for justice, and who creates safety for others. This story stirs the heart, reminding us that every small act of kindness can ripple into a life changed. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. What does this story inspire in you? How have you seen compassion make a difference in your life? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to join our community, and never miss another heartfelt tale that challenges us to be better together. Your support keeps these stories alive.